Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to the Nonprofit Coach with Ted Hart, the most listened to internet radio show in the nonprofit sector, dedicated to helping your charity succeed. It's no secret that combining online and offline techniques is the key to modern-day fundraising success, and practical advice is what you need. The Nonprofit Coach with Ted Hart is the perfect landing point to learn from experts around the world who provide advice you can use. Ted Hart is without a doubt one of the foremost nonprofit thought leaders. Also a successful author, his books range from successful online fundraising to the use of social media and how to make your nonprofit green. Guests on the Nonprofit Coach are leaders in their field who share tips and trade secrets for nonprofit management and fundraising success. Ted lectures around the world, but now he's here for you. From the latest in charity news, technology, fundraising, and social networking, Ted and his guests help you and your organization move to greater levels of efficiency and fundraising success. This is a live call-in show. Add your voice by calling 347-324-3080. After the show, you can find all our podcasts at tedhart.com. Click on Radio. Don't forget to dial 347-324-3080. Now, welcome the host of the Nonprofit Coach, Ted Hart.
And welcome to this latest edition of the Nonprofit Coach. Thank you for joining us today. Today is September 17th, 2013. We've got a very full show for you here today. And we're going north of the border for our Page 2 expert. We will have Mark Blumberg, who is not only an expert in Canadian law, but also international grant making, and he will be our Page 2 expert today. Don't forget, as the announcer just mentioned, you can call in when we get to our Page 2 expert and ask questions at 347-324-3080. You can also join us over in the chat room. I see a number of folks already over in the chat room. You can ask questions there, or you can email me your questions at tedhart@tedhart.com. As always, here on the Nonprofit Coach, we start with Page 1 News. You can follow along with the radio links by going to tedhart.com and click on radio links. You'll not only find all the links for today's show, but all of our archived best links of the Internet for nonprofit organizations for the last couple of years. First up here today comes to us from Google for Nonprofits. Over in the radio links today, you will find tips for nonprofits on Google Analytics. This is a very good video, not too long, give you some good information, how-to Q&A on how to make Google Analytics work for you. Next up here on the Nonprofit Coach, over in the radio links, you will find 7 things you didn't know that Bitly could do for you. Now, this comes to us from Mashable. Most of you are probably familiar with Bitly as the website where you can go and shorten very long links for your Twitter accounts. 140 characters in Twitter, of course, are very precious. Nobody wants to waste valuable Twitter type on extra long hyperlinks, and that's why short link generators like Bitly are indispensable to Twitter to make sure that you can link to your favorite web sites. But there are other things that Bitly can do and will do for you. I thought I would mention a few of those for you today. One is also monitor stats. So how many links or how many hits are you getting on that new Bitly short link? You can also personalize those links. So not only will it shorten it for you, but you can also personalize that link. And there's 7 tips over from Mashable on how you can more effectively use Bitly in your Twitter account. So make sure that you check that out over in the radio links today at tedhart.com. Now, I've got a good friend of the show coming on here on Page 1. Melanie Mathos comes to us from the fine folks at Blackbaud. Melanie, welcome here back to the Nonprofit Coach.
Thanks for having me, Ted.
Well, you've got some exciting news about BBCon 2013. We want to make sure that all of our listeners know that they can register to attend BBCon 2013. We do have a link over in the radio links. This will take place in Washington, D.C. at the National Harbor from September 29th to October 1st. But you've got some late-breaking news today that you can share with my listeners. So take it away, Melanie Mathos.
Sure. We have a lot of exciting news. The first piece is that we are going to be offering listeners of the Nonprofit Coach a special discount for BBCon. So if you go to bbconference.com and register with the discount code TEDHART, you'll get $125 off of registration.
Wow, $125. Now, that's Ted Hart. So if you can't remember that, my website is tedhart.com. The discount code is very easy. It's Ted Hart. So you can go right to the radio links today, which will take you to bbconference.com. You can use that radio link to save some real money. Now, why would someone want to go to BBCon?
Well, it's our 14th annual conference, and we have about 2,000 attendees that join us each year. And BBCon has really transformed into what was traditionally a Blackbaud-focused user conference into a full-blown nonprofit technology conference. So we have a ton of thought leadership sessions and best practices from some of the leading nonprofit professionals and experts like yourself around the world. And we also have two wonderful keynotes this year. The other piece of exciting news is one of our keynotes, Jim Zielkowski, the founder and CEO of Build On, is going to be on the Today Show tomorrow morning launching his new book at the 8 a.m. hour. So if you want a little preview of what's in store, you can check that out tomorrow morning.
And then he's going to be going right from the Today Show to BBCon. So that's a great win for you folks and a nice plus to BBCon this year. Now, we've got some news here regarding the Nonprofit Coach and our connection for the Nonprofit Coach to BBCon. Why don't you give my listeners a heads up on that?
Definitely. So we're excited to have you involved as a media partner on several levels. We're going to be keeping you busy on Tuesday, October 1st with your speaking session, Online Strategies, Tools, and Trade Secrets at 10:45, immediately followed by a live broadcast of the show from BBCon at 12:30. So we're really excited to have you on site in our marketplace, and I know attendees always enjoy listening in. So thanks for joining us again this year.
Well, we're honored to be back. We've been doing this for the last few years, live from BBCon. Will be the Nonprofit Coach radio show on October 1st. Now, just for my listeners, and we do have this in our newsletter and in our radio links for the schedule of the show. It is a special 90-minute edition of the Nonprofit Coach. We do start a half hour later. I believe the show is starting at 12:30 p.m. Eastern, which probably has something to do with my lecture at BBCon and making sure I won't have to be in two places at the same time. But we'll start the show at 12:30, and we will go for 90 minutes. And you're going to have quite a lineup of luminaries from BBCon on the show.
We do. We've definitely arranged some of our best speakers to join you to talk about multi-channel engagement strategies, our peer-to-peer fundraising benchmark, which is always interesting. And then Jana Eggers, our Senior Vice President of Products, is going to provide an update and roadmap on where we're going from a technology perspective. And then I know another one of your favorite topics.
Yeah, I really like having Jenna on the show. She just is not only very smart, but very succinct in helping people understand the strategies going on at Blackbaud. So you're going to be back next week with further updates from BBCon. So just remind everybody of the discount code and how much they'll save when they go to bbconference.com.
Sure. So registration's open for 10 more days, and you can go to bbconference.com to register with the special discount code TEDHART. And you'll get $125 off registration, and that includes all of our networking events, 170 educational sessions, 2 keynotes. It's going to be a great time.
And it just happens to be a terrific time to be in our nation's capital. So I encourage all my listeners to consider attending BBCon. I'd like to meet you personally, and you'll get an opportunity to actually watch a live production of the Nonprofit Coach radio show. So, Melanie, we'll chat again next week.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks so much.
Again, that was Melanie Mathos from Blackbaud here speaking about and giving details on BBCon 2013. So make sure that you save some money, $125. It's pretty good savings off from the registration for BBCon just by using the discount code Ted Hart. Next up here on the Nonprofit Coach comes to us from over on YouTube, but it actually comes to us from GuideStar. And we're going to take a little bit of a listen here to a new offering coming to us from GuideStar.
Americans donate $300 billion to nonprofit organizations every year. Our Money for Good research shows that every year donors are willing to shift up to $15 billion to high-performing nonprofits. That means millions of donors are looking for where their money will do the most good. How do we get a larger share? Your best chance to capture a share of these dollars is a three-stage process. When researching a nonprofit, donors want to understand the full story of what you do and the impact you are having. To do that, collect the information that helps you explain the difference you are making. Then, communicate your story in a way that reassures donors that you use their money wisely and are indeed having an impact. An easy way to do this is to share third-party accolades. How do we know what motivates our donors? By getting to know them. Donors fall into 6 main types. If you identify your main donor types, you can better tailor your messages to connect with your donors. To get started, download our free guide, More Money for More Good. In it, you will find 10 tips to help make your organization more effective, increase your available funds, and help advance the sector.
And the GuideStar More Money for More Good download is available today in the radio links here on the Nonprofit Coach. Go to tedhart.com and you'll be able to receive that. Also, a heads up, we will have a guest from GuideStar here with us on next week's show for the GuideStar Minute. They're here with us each month with updates from GuideStar, and they will be giving you a little bit more information about the GuideStar More Money for More Good download that's available to you. Next up here on the Nonprofit Coach is a new friend, a new opportunity for us to have a expert here on the Nonprofit Coach. In this case, today joining us from John Wiley & Sons is a new guest host here on the Nonprofit Coach. Bill Falloon is joining me. He's the executive editor for John Wiley & Sons, working with authors in the Wiley Nonprofit Authority series. In addition, other authors in finance, investment, trading, and entrepreneurship. Prior to joining Wiley 12 years ago, he was a senior editor at Risk Magazine, a leading London-based publication specializing in financial risk management. He's the author of 2 books himself, and he is here with us on the Nonprofit Coach. He'll be with us each month, introducing us to the AFP Wiley radio show guest. And next week is the AFP Wiley radio show here on the Nonprofit Coach. Welcome here, Bill Falloon.
Thanks very much, Ted. Really enjoy the invite.
Bill, it's great to have you with us, and certainly the partnership with Wiley Books and our opportunity to draw attention to the wonderful authors and new books that you folks have over at Wiley. And next week is our monthly AFP Wiley radio show here on the Nonprofit Coach. Who have you got lined up for that show?
Ted, it's a pleasure to introduce Susan Raymond and her book to you. I'm not sure that Susan really needs any introduction at all. She's the Executive Vice President for Research and Analytics at Changing Our World, a nonprofit consulting firm. She's also on the advisory board of the Center for Global Prosperity in Washington, D.C. And just to add to the list of accolades, she was appointed to the board of the Civilian Research and Development Foundation by the director of the National Science Foundation. Really excited to be introducing her book, Recession, Recovery, and Renewal, long-term nonprofit strategies for rapid economic change. The book really shows nonprofits how to adapt their management programs, skills, leadership, and governance to rapidly and changing economic environments. As we all know, the global recession and the economic recession in the States has had a huge impact on all businesses, including nonprofits. This book is really a practical guide on how to pay attention to economic indicators and adapt accordingly and react before the world gets you. And it's really about how to improve your funding strategy as a nonprofit. Susan's all about sharing the best survive and succeed strategies for nonprofits, and I'm sure everybody's really going to enjoy her new book and the interview with you.
This is really a terrific opportunity and very, very timely for Wiley to bring this book out. Susan is truly a luminary in the nonprofit sector and brings serious-minded research to important topics of this sort. So this is not just a from the gut or this is how I would do it sort of book. This is a well-thought-through, well-researched book, of course, and that's what Susan does for a living, and she's among the very best in doing that. So really a fantastic choice. It's going to be a really, really good show next week. And a great way, I think, to kick off the AFP Wiley fall series here on the Nonprofit Coach as we're just coming back from summer hiatus. So Bill Falloon, great to have you now joining us. You'll be our official guest host here each month as you introduce the lineup of fantastic authors that you bring from John Wiley & Sons from the AFP Wiley series. So thank you again for coming on the show, and we'll catch up with you next month.
Okay, Ted. Always a pleasure, and thanks for the invite again.
You bet. And everyone, don't forget we do have a link to the John Wiley & Sons website, so you can go and check out all the nonprofit books, including Susan Raymond's new book that will be highlighted here on the Nonprofit Coach next week. Wrapping up page one news here is one of the big topics we get questions about is what about tablets? We obviously know about laptops and desktops, but what about tablets? So many different options out there, and how do you make a wise choice between iPads and Androids and now Google and Microsoft Surface, so all these different options. We have a link to you. This comes to us from the Yahoo Small Business Advisor to help you choose the tablet that suits you. So find that over in the radio links at tedhart.com. And with that, it is now my pleasure to bring here on to the Nonprofit Coach Show, Mark Blumberg. Mark Blumberg is my guest here on the Nonprofit Coach, page 2 guest expert. He's a partner at Blumberg Segal in Toronto and works almost exclusively in the areas of nonprofit and charity law. He has a Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Toronto and a Bachelor of Laws from the University of British Columbia, and also a Master of Laws from the Osgoode Hall Law School in tax law. He is well known throughout Canada and beyond Canada as not only an expert in nonprofit law, but also an expert in international giving from Canada. Mark is quoted regularly in print media and appears frequently on radio and television on the topics related to philanthropy and regulation of charities in Canada. And welcome here now to the Nonprofit Coach, Mark Blumberg. How are you?
Doing great, Ted. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, Mark, it's great to have you here, and Canada is a very important philanthropic community, one that is growing and one that is changing. So to have the opportunity to have an expert like yourself here on the Nonprofit Coach is not only important to our Canadian listeners, but also important to philanthropists and nonprofits around the world who may want to be introduced in Canada, but also may want to have donors have interest in them from Canada. So why don't we start off a little bit more about your expertise and help fill us in to how is it that you became one of the foremost experts in Canadian law, but also in international giving from Canada?
Well, I'm not sure if I'm foremost expert, but what I'll tell you is in terms of the background, the area in Canada is a little bit less developed than in the U.S. in terms of both the legal area and also in terms of fundraising. So when I got involved about 15 years ago, I saw some huge gaps, and one of the big gaps, for example, was on international grant making. So I prepared a website, globalphilanthropy.ca, where I tried to encourage Canadian charities to do more international work. And, you know, around the world, there's been a lot of interest in international work. So in just the Canadian example, we've gone from spending about $1 billion abroad about 10 years ago to spending about $3 billion a year last year. So there's been a tremendous increase. And with private foundations that do international philanthropy, the amounts of money spent by them in terms of the international has gone up as well. So I've just got involved essentially in where the needs are. This last year in Canada, political activities were quite a big issue. So consequently, been doing a lot of work in that area of political activities. Other areas right now that are quite hot are some of the corporate areas affecting charities, because there's a lot of corporate changes going on in Canada at the moment affecting nonprofit entities as well as charities.
Terrific. And I did want to let our listeners know that we have provided a link in the radio links today directly to globalphilanthropy.ca, which is your website, as you said, specifically geared towards encouraging international giving from Canada. That has really been an area of great growth, and certainly one of the reasons why you and I have come into association with each other as the CEO at CAF America. We have a great deal of interest in philanthropy throughout North America. We grant into Canada on a regular basis and are now looking for ways to help good-willed philanthropists in Canada be able to support charities that they would like to support around the world. You said that the Canadian philanthropic marketplace is less developed than the United States, but certainly rapidly in growth and changing all the time. What is, and that in my mind is really taken off the last 10, 15 years. Why sort of this late decade rapid growth in philanthropy in Canada? Was something changed about the law or the interest?
Well, basically, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I would say that essentially. What I mean is not having a very well-developed philanthropic sector is not necessarily a bad thing. It depends how you look at it, right? Okay. The Canadian government has been very supportive of the charitable sector. So just to give an example, right now, if you take all of the Canadian charities, the hospitals, the universities, social welfare, international development, you take it all together, the federal, provincial, municipal governments provide 70% of their funding, okay? So consequently, because they provide such a large amount of the funding, the need, if you will, for the philanthropic side is a little bit less than in the United States, where I understand your governments give a lot less in terms of funding. So, for example, when it comes to the areas now where governments have either been cutting back, there's a greater need for philanthropic giving, but also essentially if one would talk 70% is from government, about 25% is earned income, social enterprise, charging tuition, things like that, and philanthropy is only about 5% of that total amount. So the amount in terms of philanthropy will increase, the sophistication of which it's practiced here in Canada will increase, but I think we actually have a very good sort of system and situation here in Canada where many charities can rely on pretty consistent government support for what they're doing. Obviously not all charities, and that is supplemented by philanthropic funds, and increasingly as the needs are there and government is not prepared to fund certain things, philanthropy becomes even more important. And of course there are many types of organizations that government wouldn't fund.
Right. What about the regulation side or tax deductibility of giving in Canada? Is that different than the United States? Is it more difficult to qualify for a tax deduction of a gift?
Well, in the U.S., I think the IRS registers a lot more as a percentage of the applications than we do here in Canada. But a large part of that is just the function of you have to get the application done in a particular format and with the appropriate information and the things like that. But in terms of the current climate in Canada, I think we probably have about the most generous tax incentives of any country in the world. Right now, I'll just give an example. If a wealthy Canadian gives $100 million to a Canadian charity and they do it through, appreciated marketable securities, so donation of public company shares, they could potentially have a tax benefit of up to 65%. And a normal cash donation, you're looking at about a 50% tax benefit. So very generous tax incentives. They can carry it forward up to 5 years. They can eliminate up to 75% of their income. So very positive environment in terms of giving in Canada at the moment. And we don't have the same debate that I understand has been going on in the States with respect to potentially capping or limiting the amount of benefits that people get from donations. So all in all,
it seems to be a regular political football to talk about those changes in the United States. However, we do have a long-standing tradition of support for philanthropists in the United States. So those of us in the sector are certainly hoping that those calls for changing the kinds of incentives that makes it possible to fund particularly programs for the most needy, but also, as you pointed out, those things that government chooses not to fund for whatever reason. Often we do look to philanthropists to make up that difference, and sometimes those incentives make a bit of a difference in terms of how much people give. So for Canadians, the fact that government does fund a fair amount of nonprofit or charitable work in Canada, that in and of itself has been changing, particularly in the healthcare sector and others. And have Canadians grown to have an increased interest in supporting those projects that were once funded by government, or is there a general sense that they should still be funded by government?
Well, I think in any area you look at healthcare, for example, the amount of money that has been spent continues to increase. It's just a matter of however the needs continue to increase. So, and also there are certain things the government will fund. There are other things they may not be prepared to fund. And many philanthropists are interested in seeing change, and they want to see it happen quicker than perhaps would be the case if they were not supporting a particular charity, are quite eager to get involved. So there's no question there's been increase in interest in philanthropy in Canada, and luckily we haven't yet, although I'm crossing my fingers on this, seen massive government cutbacks in terms of the philanthropic sector. And also we didn't have any decline really when we had the 2008, 2009, the economic downturn. There wasn't any decline in giving in Canada. So all in all, the Canadian nonprofit charity sector is doing quite well, but obviously we want more resources to be able to deal with more things, and that means encouraging more donors to give more.
In a healthy nonprofit sector, are you seeing a trend of more new charities being created, and are there any trends in the types of charities that are being created?
Yes, I would say it's probably similar to the U.S. in that regard. But smaller numbers, obviously. We have about almost 3,000 new charities coming on the scene every single year that are registered charities with the Canada Revenue Agency. So we have a constant number that are coming in. We have some that are not anymore going to be registered charities, largely because they don't do their filings. And I understand you guys have that 3-year filing requirement now. If you don't file within 3 years, we've always had a 1-year filing requirement. So if you don't file, you will, after a period of 8 months or a year, you'll basically be removed as a charity. So we have new organizations coming in all the time. What's that?
I believe that's policed pretty strictly in Canada. You miss those filings,
absolutely,
and you will lose your status. What's the are there trends in terms of the types of charities that are being created in Canada?
Oh, absolutely. First of all, one of the things I would say is about half our charities are religious, so there's a lot of religious organizations that are setting up organizations, less the mainline sort of denominations, more groups that come from other countries in some cases and are not the traditional sort of religious groups. In terms of areas of, for example, dealing with hunger and poverty, things like that, you have groups that are very much focused on certain social enterprise models that have been registered. You have groups that are dealing with education using, for example, technology and things like that. So it's what you can see today is obviously a lot more diverse than what you would have seen 20 or 30 years ago. There's no question, and it's not just about money. Obviously, it's also about having a certain diversity, having organizations that are prepared to have some involvement in the political realm. They can't be involved in partisan politics, but they can, be involved with non-partisan type activities, advocating for changes in policy, things like that. So we have lots of organizations, whether it's environmental organizations, there's a lot of them being registered, as well as other areas, alternative healthcare type initiatives, etc.
Canada is a very large country and very diverse populations. Are there centers of philanthropy in Canada as there are in the United States?
Yes, the major cities tend to have a good representation in terms of the number of charities. As you get into rural areas and more north, one gets into situations where there are far fewer charities, and often there aren't charities to deal with certain issues. So absolutely, there's that sort of a divide. We have about 86,000 registered charities, but Canada is a big country. It's a little bit bigger than the U.S. in terms of geographic area. So consequently, for example, environmentalists, Canada is a very important country because what happens in Canada can have a spillover effect, for example, into the U.S. or can just affect, the environment in the whole world. So there is a lot of concern with respect to the environment here. But yes, it does tend to be that in the large urban areas, you're going to have a real great representation of charities, and much less so as you start going away from them. Yeah.
And that's where sometimes there can be some dust-ups over the issue of advocacy. If I remember correctly, a year or so ago, there was a bit of a dust-up between the government and some environmental groups that they were at odds with each other as to whether or not it was a political activity or not. So those issues are monitored pretty closely in Canada as well.
Yeah, we had a bit, I guess dust-up is a good way of putting it. Essentially, the Conservative government was upset that some environmental groups were concerned about some pipelines that were being proposed to be built. And I think, there were certainly some senators and others who, we have an unelected Senate here, who said certain outrageous things. But essentially what it came down to was some people were complaining about environmental groups that were essentially doing what their job is to advocate to protect the environment, and so what the government did was basically allocate more money to do education about what charities can and cannot do in the political realm, as well as do more audits and things like that. So what I can say is that with all of that money allocated for extra review, at the moment only one Canadian charity has lost its charitable status for involvement with the political issues that were not appropriate. Others are being looked at. It has created, you could say, a little bit of a chill, but on the other hand, as the Canadian government is spending time telling charities that they in fact are allowed to do political activities, they just have to keep it to no more than 10% of their resources, and it has to stay non-political. And those activities have to relate to the object. So if you're environmental, then do environmental work. Stay away from abortion. So you've got to stay with your objects. As long as you do that, charities are allowed to spend money and resources.
Expand those voices, because now there's a more common understanding. So maybe a little bit of a solution in search of a problem.
Well, I think there was an overreaction, if you will, by some members of Parliament and others. And then when you look at the actual government response in the budget, et cetera, it was, it sounded more like it was a lot of bark with no bite, really. So we'll see what happens. The story hasn't been finally written on it, but I would be quite confident that in the next few years you'll probably have more Canadian charities involved with the area of allowable political activities, because for many types of issues, as you know, Ted, you can't really achieve much by just fundraising to get money and then spending it on programs. You need to have governmental policy change. You need to have government put real resources into certain issues. So it's really important that charities be at the table on those political issues and not leave it to just business and other lobby groups to be there. So charities have a role to play. They have to take it more seriously. They've got to get up to speed as to how you work the political system. They've got to put resources into it. And so I think it's been a good wake-up call for the charity sector to now be more serious about how they interact with government and political issues.
That's great. We're going to take a very quick break here. When we come back, I do want to jump into your area of expertise related to global philanthropy in Canada, why that's growing, how it's growing, and what nonprofits should know about that. And we'll be right back here with Mark Blumberg on the Nonprofit Coach.
Life gets busy. Wouldn't it be nice to have a central place where you could save what's on your mind? With Google Keep, you can stay on top of your world by quickly and easily organizing everything you want to remember. No matter where you are.
Finalize door list for Thursday's gig.
So when you find inspiration, you can file away your ideas. And Google Keep stores them safely across all your devices. And when the time comes, you'll have everything covered. Save what's on your mind. Google Keep.
Remember, our podcasts and archives are always available 24 hours a day at tedhart.com. Click on Radio Links. If you're listening live today, the phone lines are open. Call in and ask a question by dialing 347-324-3080. Now, back to the Nonprofit Coach with Ted Hart.
And we're back here live on the Nonprofit Coach with Mark Blumberg. And Mark, before we get into the international giving and certainly your website, Global Philanthropy, we do have an email question from Jane, and she's asking the role of the CRA.
Okay, so the CRA has a role. This is a Canada Revenue Agency. They have a small group within the Canada Revenue Agency called the Charities Directorate. It's about 250 people, and essentially they are responsible for regulation of registered charities under the Income Tax Act. So if you just wanted to have a little church, it's could be considered a charity, but you don't want it to be registered, you don't want to issue receipts and all that stuff, that's one thing. But if you're a registered charity under the Income Tax Act, you can issue receipts, and then you will be under the purview of the Charities Directorate of the Canada Revenue Agency, and you have to file every year forms with them. And they could audit you. They audit about 1% of charities per year. And you can also go to them for advice and help with respect to certain issues.
And what's the benefit of having that approval? Is it possible for charities to conduct business without CRA approval?
It is possible for an organization to do things that are like being a charity, okay? But technically, if you are a charity under the Canadian income tax system, you should either be a registered charity or you might be considered a for-profit entity. But we do have this large group of non-profits, but they're generally doing things like amateur sports or political parties, things like that. So essentially, everything in Canada is sort of divided into either you're a for-profit or you're a non-profit. And within that nonprofit realm, there's a subgroup, which is essentially registered charities. And the big advantage of being a registered charity is the ability to issue official donation receipts, so that if someone gives you, say, $100, they'll get, $40 or $50 tax benefit of that donation. Whereas if they're not a registered charity, they would not get any tax benefit.
So people could still make a charitable donation, but not a tax-deductible charitable donation.
Exactly. So, when you think of crowdsourced funding, if people want to give $2 or $10, they may not really care if they get any benefit from it, which then means, and a lot of groups, if you think of some of the environmental groups like, Greenpeace, for example, they may wish to rather have more flexibility and not be, in fact, a registered charity. And so, if you're not a registered charity, you don't have to comply with certain rules relating to registered charities. And for some organizations, it's actually beneficial not to be a registered charity.
And so there are 86,000 Canadian registered charities that people can give to and receive tax deductions. What about Canadians who would like to give outside of Canada? What are the rules regarding that?
So there are some categories. The biggest one is that there are about 500 foreign universities that Canadian charities can give money to. These are foreign universities that have typically Canadian students studying at them, and they're on a list that they basically made application, and they're on a list. Okay,
you went out just a little bit for us there.
Oh, okay. Sorry, there's about 500 foreign universities that are prescribed foreign universities, so they are on a list, and essentially Canadians can donate to those foreign universities in the same way as if they're donating to a Canadian charity. They're considered qualified donees, and the person making the donation will get the same tax benefit. So, for example, Harvard would be an example. If a Canadian donates to them, they would get the same tax benefit as if they gave money to the University of Toronto. Okay. So those are qualified donees abroad. Yes. There's a small category that I'm hoping will take off. It only has about 10 charities, including, Clinton's charity on it. It's sort of certain foreign organizations that the Canadian government has made a gift to. And they've reconstituted the category, and I'm sort of hoping that they will start on some of the international development organizations that are doing some great work around the world and add them to the list. But the basic point is, if a Canadian wants to give money to a foreign charity, whether it's in the U.S. or Costa Rica or wherever, they can do it. There's really no restrictions on it, but they can't get the Canadian tax deductibility for that donation. What they can do, and it's not that different than, I guess, in some cases than what you do in America, where you have an American Friends of. So you can have a Canadian Friends of institution here in Canada, which basically would be funding activities outside the country. It would do it itself, so it's essentially the Canadian charities carrying out its own activities by hiring a group in the States or elsewhere to do work for the Canadian charity. So essentially it's like a project funding of something, a distinct activity. It can also be that in some cases you can have a joint venture where the Canadian charity is pooling money with a foreign entity, and as long as there's the appropriate amount of direction and control, the Canadian government has no problem with these Canadian, charities doing the foreign activity that they are doing. And as I mentioned just at the beginning, we've gone from about 10 years ago, just over $1 billion to just under $3 billion now of foreign activities. So the amount of foreign activities coming from Canada is increasing quite substantially, and this is all within the same rules. There hasn't really been any big changes to the rules over the last 10 or 15 years. Okay.
And that's the $3 billion now. That's an incredible rate of growth. And is most of that being given without tax deductibility?
No, that's all being given with tax deductibility. Those are Canadian charities conducting foreign activities. So they get money in Canada, but some of the money comes from Canadian government, some of it comes from business, some comes from individuals. The really interesting thing, which you have in the U.S. as well, but it's even more pronounced in Canada, is the remittance issue, which is you have Canadians sending money abroad to family and friends, and they get no tax benefit for that. But that in Canada is $15 billion a year. So just to make a comparison here, the Canadian charity spending abroad is about $3 billion. Canadians who are typically quite poor, coming from foreign countries generally, who are sending money back to their family and friends, are sending $15 billion. So it's 5 times as much money. So that actually, if you want to talk, if you want to talk impact, it's huge, and there's no tax deductibility for it. There's no support given by the Canadian government, that sort of thing. I think Canada is about the 3rd largest remitter of any of the countries in the world. Okay.
So that's a great deal of interest in activities outside of the Canadian border. Why the interest of Canadians in those kinds of charitable activities?
Well, I think it's probably similar to the U.S. in that often you can see that, while there may be tremendous needs at home, there are huge, huge needs in other countries. I just spent a week going around Poland and visiting Holocaust sites and, thinking about all the problems of the Second World War. There are places in Africa right now where, there's genocide. There's places where there is, starvation and other things. And, small amounts of effort in many cases can save a lot of lives. So some people thinking in that way are interested in it. Sometimes international, it's based on you just want to get the best and brightest to be doing something. So if you're interested in, for example, work on a particular type of research to solve a medical problem, and there's Hong Kong, there's a university there that's the best at it, well, then you're probably going to put your money towards that, right? So national boundaries are not that important anymore, and with the internet and technology, it's easier to know what's going on around the world and communicate with people and things like that. So sometimes it's about getting better bang for your buck. Sometimes it's about doing the best thing. There's a lot of American environmental groups. I should mention that Canada gets about $900 million a year, largely from the United States, in terms of Americans, both foundations and individuals, supporting Canadian charities. And in fact, one of the big hullabaloo about the whole political issue that we talked about earlier, a lot of it came from that some big American foundations were funding some of the political work that was going on here in Canada, and there was concern about that. But, the way I see it is, the American foundations have the right to fund things that they want to fund, and it's pretty smart to fund things in the political realm. In some cases, you can get good bang for your buck. But so there's many reasons like that. You also have Canada, just like the States, very multicultural, and people from different countries. Most Canadians are not necessarily born here in Canada. They come from other places. They have families around the world. And there's an interest in what's going on. And with the media today covering things, obviously selectively, but they are covering things that are going on in all sorts of different places, people are gravitating to want to be able to do something and to be able to help. And so there's a tremendous amount of interest in local activities, but increasingly and, quite a bit of interest in international, and I hope that continues.
So an increasingly international population has an international interest in charities around the world. So, Mark, thinking about the broad charitable sector in Canada, and from your expertise of having legal background, what is often missed? Opportunities that are missed or mistakes that are made by charities?
Well, in terms of what's missed. I guess if I was thinking in the fundraising realm, things like bequests are often not given much attention, and that can mean very significant money, often unrestricted funds coming into charities. I don't know that that's that different in the U.S., but I think we are even more behind the ball there. In terms of what's missed in terms of the way Canadian charities spend money, I would say they probably don't spend nearly enough money on technology to take advantage of the improvements and the efficiency and effectiveness that can be gained by being more involved with technology. I think I saw statistics in Canada which said that as a percentage, Canadian for-profit companies spend 6 times more than Canadian nonprofits on technology. So, that in terms of expenditures, I would say technology is something that's not taken as seriously as it probably should be. In terms of getting back to that political issue, Canadian charities spend around 20 to 40 million on political activities a year. But if we're allowed to spend 10% of our budget, which is over $200 billion, it means that we can actually spend about $20 billion. So we're spending about $20 million. We could be spending $20 billion on political activities. So we could spend 1,000 times more. So I certainly think Canadian charities should spend some more money, not necessarily 1,000 times, but maybe a few times what they are spending right now. Because there are tremendous examples you can come up with where spending $1 million on political advocacy can result in hundreds of millions of dollars worth of funding for an area or improvements or changes in policy that can be really dramatic. So, that's an area that I think probably Canadian charities haven't done as good a job as they should. Right now, there's a lot of scrutiny on fundraising costs and the effectiveness of fundraising, so that's getting some charities into some trouble. But basically, social enterprise and earned income type activities have increased quite a bit. And as I mentioned, that's about 25% of the revenue of Canadian charities. So it's talked about a lot, but the reality is it's been around for a long time. It will continue to grow. Canadian charities are in a good place to be able to run some of those business and earned income activities. They just have to, however, watch that they do it within the rules that are there for Canadian charities. There are some restrictions in terms of what they can do. But I don't know if that answered your question, Ted.
Well, no, it really did, but it also raised the issue of if they were spending more and if they were focused in their approach, they might also attract more members of government who understand the nonprofit sector and the value of the nonprofit sector, rather than those that might wish to make a punching bag out of it.
No, absolutely. We have an interesting situation in Canada where even people who've worked in the nonprofit sector, when they get elected, seem to forget a lot. And there are very few, for example, Canadian parliamentarians who are prepared to really stand up for the nonprofit sector. We had a debate, it was called C-470, which was a debate about one private member had put forward a bill to say that all Canadian charities should be capped in terms of how much they could pay anyone. And she said the cap should be at $250,000. Now, you've just got to think for a minute here that universities and hospitals and all these institutions, they're registered charities. So if a Canadian charity could not pay, or a Philharmonic could not pay more than a certain amount, it basically would really hinder their ability to get the talent that they need, because often that talent is not it's not just you're looking for Canadians, you're looking for anyone around the world who's the best person to do the job, right? So, right. Try to find a neurosurgeon.
Right, there'll be a lot
try
of
to find a neurosurgeon
across the border.
Exactly. So it was just ridiculous, but it passed almost unanimously. And then thankfully, a few years ago, there was an election, and before the election, then all the bills die, and it hasn't been resurrected. But, when it comes to actually standing by the nonprofit sector and supporting it, in many cases, the politicians, they have very slim understanding of the challenges that nonprofits have. But, the way I see it is it's a challenge. One has to then work with, and I do a lot of work with members of parliament, senators, and also the media, to try and explain to them, what are some of these challenges that nonprofits and charities have, so that they can understand it more. The amount of scrutiny that charities is getting is a lot more than it used to, and it, in my mind, will only get more. So it's about charities understanding that is life. And when Canadian charities get, over $130 billion worth of government money, they can't expect that it's somehow not going to be asked about. There will be questions, and they need to be able to competently respond. They need to be transparent about what they're doing. They need to be prepared to be accountable, and all those sort of things. And if they're not, the esteem that the public has of charities will decline tremendously. One of the things that I'm quite happy with is that the public confidence in charities in Canada has stayed relatively stable at a very high level. It's about 77% say that they trust charities. And that's something that is really important, because it's very easy to lose that trust if you just have a few scandals and things like that. So it's very important
Is that sort of what you were saying in terms of a maturing nonprofit sector, and that there is still room for regulation that supports the sector, but also understanding of the sector?
Oh, absolutely. There's definitely a need. We just replaced our federal corporate law with an act that was from 1917. It was just replaced now. So it took 90 years to get the federal corporate, if you set up a federal corporation, the act replaced. 90 years, that's a very long time. So there's often huge gaps in the regulation of charities in Canada, because it just doesn't get the front page sort of attention. And yes, there could be more regulation that would be essentially to just prevent about a very small number of people, maybe 500 or 1,000 people, who come up with very scary schemes, to exploit the sector. That would be a large part of why one needs some more regulation. But largely, one's always trying to balance having the ease of helping small nonprofits that are doing great work, that are all volunteer, etc., not trying to impose too much obligations on them. But at the other end, always keeping in mind that there are huge fiscal advantages given to charities by the ability to issue these official donation receipts, and not to mention all the money they get from government and other sources. So to make sure that there's the necessary transparency, accountability, etc. there. And that's something that the Canada Revenue Agency, it only implements the rules, but the Finance Department basically comes up with them, and they've been in a very incremental way bringing in more regulations to respond to concerns, whether it be about terrorism or money laundering or inappropriate activities of private foundations or whatever. But I think it has to always be a balancing act where one doesn't want to be imposing too many obligations on charities, but at the same time you want to protect the name of the charity sector. You want to protect the good work that legitimate charities are doing and not let a few bad apples get away with things, and then it tarnishes the reputation of the sector.
Exactly. Peter emails in asking if there are, I guess this must be a pickup on some of the things that you've been mentioning here. Are there any new regulations the nonprofit sector is facing?
New regulations, well, every year there's a little bit that's new, but the reality is there's very little that's new in Canada that wasn't around, 5 or 10 years ago. And I know that lawyers and accountants and others love to talk about what's new and, recent developments. It sounds interesting. But practically speaking, no, there's not that much that's new here in Canada. The rules, they're just little tweaks. Most of the changes, in fact, relate to things like what we call abusive charity gifting tax schemes. These are schemes where you put in like $10 and you get a $100 receipt. Usually involves pharmaceuticals from, India, and valuing them at you bought them for $50,000, but let's say they're worth $100 million, because in New York City or in Toronto, that's what you'd pay $100 million for those containers of pills. So, there's all these sort of scheming that's going on, and so there are changes that affect that. But for your average charity, the amount of changes is limited. There's a little bit, I'll just give an example of one change over the last year. There's a few questions that have been added to the T3010 relating to political activities. So the vast majority of charities don't do any political activities, but for those who do, they need to make sure that they complete those extra questions that are on the T3010. But if you look at your 990 form in the U.S., which is a pretty complicated, extensive form with a lot of information on
very
it,
complicated.
Well,
right.
Our one is 10% is complicated and gives about 10% the information. So if you're asking me, I don't want your 990, but I'd like more than what we have. And but meanwhile, there's a lot of people who don't want the government asking any information of charities. But I think that that's a recipe for a disaster, where if charities are largely viewed as secret societies, that has its own downside, right? So, yes, we have little incremental changes, nothing too exciting here in Canada. But the interesting thing has just been, like, for example, MasterCard, when they had to look around the world and work out where are they going to put their foundation to operate internationally, they decided to use Canada. So MasterCard Foundation is based in Toronto. And there's a lot of organizations setting up in Canada because it's a good place to operate from. It's a good environment, and there's a lot, so a lot of good things. And so, yeah, things seem to be going quite well here in Canada. And yeah. So that's just some thoughts in terms of.
That's great. Well, Peter, thank you for your question, and Mark, thank you for your answer. Just a quick update for everyone. Grab your calendars. As you heard earlier, the fantastic Susan Raymond will be here on the Nonprofit Coach, talking about rapid economic change next week here on the Nonprofit Coach. September 24th, 12 noon Eastern. Following that, we'll be live from the BBCon Conference 2012. That will start at 12:30 Eastern. Note the time change. It will be a 90-minute show. That's on October 1st. And immediately following that is one of the most popular shows we ever have here on the Nonprofit Coach. Penelope Burke will be back with her annual What Donors Want, What They Do and What They Think. That's going to be on October 8th at 12 noon Eastern. Before I let you go, Mark, how can my listeners reach you?
Ted, if they want to reach us, if they go to my globalphilanthropy.ca website, our contact information is there, and they can reach me at mark@blumbergs.ca. It's all on the globalphilanthropy.ca website. Okay?
That's terrific. And at globalphilanthropy.ca, we do have a link to that today at tedhart.com over in the radio links. Mark, thank you so much for being my guest here The Nonprofit Coach did a fantastic job. We all learned so much more about Canada, Canadians, and philanthropy.
Thank you, Ted, for having me. I really appreciate it.
We'll be right back here next week with the AFP Wiley radio show here on The Nonprofit Coach.
You've been listening to the Nonprofit Coach radio show with Ted Hart. Tell all your friends to check out our production schedule and download our iPod and iPad-friendly podcast at tedhart.com. Thanks for listening to the Nonprofit Coach.
When it comes to cleaning your house, who doesn't wish un galán with a trust fund swept in and passed the mop to your evil stepmom like in the telenovelas? Hola, it's Chiquis here, and although life isn't always like in the soap operas, Fabuloso does bring a clean that's always over the top. Get your home dramatically clean anytime you like, without any evil mama drama. Just long-lasting lavender freshness. That's Fabuloso, taking the drama out of any mess.
Fabuloso's 2x concentrated formula provides 2 times more active ingredients versus non-concentrated Fabuloso Original. Use as directed.
Looking for excitement? Chumba Casino is here. Play anytime, play anywhere. Play on the train, play at the store, play at home, play when you're bored. Play today for your chance to win and get daily bonuses when you log in. So what are you waiting for? Don't delay. Chumba Casino is free to play.
Experience social gameplay like never before. Go to Chumba Casino right now to play hundreds of games, including online slots, bingo, Slingo, and more. Live the Chumba life at ChumbaCasino.com.
VGW Group. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.